give a little review here for the last couple weeks. And then, yes, I do have a YouTube video that we're going to watch as well. So audio listeners are going to miss out on that. But just to kind of rehash real quickly, we have what we're talking about is love and respect, right? The husband needs respect. These are the two things that we need the most. Husband needs respect. The wife needs love. It's the way God has made us and the needs that we have the most. Typically, what will happen if we're not careful is we will react and act in ways that aren't loving as husbands, and as wives, we will act in ways that are not respectful. And when we do that, the author of this book calls that kind of cycle that you get your marriage on the crazy cycle. And it's a circle with arrows, and it basically says that when the husband acts without love towards his wife, she reacts usually in a negative way because she's not getting the love she needs, and that comes across as disrespectful. And so she acts disrespectfully, and when that comes to the husband, that treats him in a disrespectful manner, and he automatically reacts in an unloving way. And you get on this cycle, you just keep spinning. And that's when little arguments become huge, blow-up, full-blown, just yelling sessions, when the wife isn't feeling loved and the husband isn't feeling respected. And that is the opposite of the way God wants it to be. As in Ephesians chapter 5, if you're there, verse number 33, these are commands that God gives to the husband and God gives to the wife. It says, nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself. So the husband is supposed to love his wife like he loves himself. And in other places in Scripture, it says to love your wife like Christ loves the church. And he gave his life for the church. And then it continues, it says, and the wife see that she reverence or respect her husband and show him respect. These are commands that are given to us as husbands, as wives, as Christians. These are commands that God gives to us because when we obey God and do the things the way God says to do them, they always work out the best. When we do things the way we think is best, or when we act in our own selfish, carnal way, which is natural for us, it might be fine for a while, but it never works out as good as it does when you do what God says. When you obey God, when you love your wife like Christ loved the church, when you respect your husband because God says so, the relationship will be better than it could be without it. So that's our building blocks, is giving the love that our wife needs and giving the respect that your husband needs. If we don't do that, we just end up on this crazy cycle of going round and round, and it'll always feel off. You'll always be fighting. You'll always be arguing. You'll always have tension. And it'll always be just negative. And that's the crazy cycle. Our aim and our goal to be is on the energizing cycle where we treat our spouse with love. And when you treat your wife with love and give her the love that she needs, it motivates her to be respectful to you, to treat you with respect, to give you the respect that you need as a husband. And I can tell you, as a husband, when you're given the respect that maybe you even don't even know that you need, when you're given that respect and built up, it softens your heart, and it causes you to react in love and give your love to the wife that she needs. And it's a perfect symbiotic circle that works. When you give what your spouse needs, she and he will usually give what you need. So that's the goal, is to be energizing, to energize each other, to do for the spouse what they need the most. Not to get what you want, but because that's what God commanded you to do. But again, when you do the things the way God says to, it works out. And when you give the love you're supposed to give, and you give the respect you're supposed to give, in turn, the husband and wife will do the opposite. So, the last couple weeks, and I lost my pen. I was going to look for it. I assume Miss Noel put it away so that the toddlers weren't drawing all over the board. So we have acronyms. The couple acronym is for the husbands. These are things that the husbands need to focus on and should do. And then the chairs acronym is for the wives. We'll get to that next. But so we did closeness for the husband. The wives need to feel close to you. The wives want that closeness, that, the two shall become one. When you get married, the two become one. It's a face-to-face, one soul thing that you can't separate it. Next, the wives need openness. The wives feel close. And you'll see these first three specifically really tie into one another. But the wife feels close to you, husbands, when you're open with her. So those of you that went on the men's retreat, and she said, how did it go? If you're like, yeah, it was fine. It was good. It was great. Had fun. Not real open, right? Hopefully you were like, you had your notes out and you went through your notes and you told her about the messages that you heard. You told her about some of the stories in the cabin. Hopefully some of you might want to have kept to yourself. Some things you just don't want to know. But she needs that openness. And when you come home and you're open with your day, or when you're gone for a few days and you're open and you don't remember everything. I have a hard time remembering everything, especially in chronological order, as is the best way to regurgitate the information. Start at the beginning and get all the way to the end. I have a hard time with that. I jump around a lot. But when you're open with your spouse, guys, when you're open with your wife, she feels close to you. She feels like you love her. She feels like you care. Like what happened to you and what happened in your day and in your heart in this instance for the men's retreat, and we got spiritual advice and preaching, and hopefully it changed us. Being open with our wives and saying, this is what changed. This is what got to me. This is something that I'm going to do different. This is something that I was encouraged and challenged about. When you share those deep things with your wife, right? Those spiritual things, when the Lord speaks to you and the Holy Spirit motivates you to do something, and you tell your wife that, you're not holding things back. And when a wife knows that you're not holding things back, she feels like you love her. She feels like you're close, and that's showing love. So those are things that we need to practice. Being close, what our wife needs, being open, and then thirdly, you is understanding. Understanding. So again, these three things are tied together really closely. Go to 1 Peter chapter 3 if you went there already, or if you bookmarked it. 1 Peter chapter 3. The wives need the understanding. They want to be... We as husbands need to work at understanding them. Now, a man might say there's no way you could ever understand a woman. It's an enigma, wrapped in a mystery, wrapped in a riddle. There's no way to understand. And although I understand that take on it, and sometimes that may be true, as a Christian and as a husband that wants to be an energizing cycle with his wife, we need to work at understanding our wives. Our wives want to be understood. They want us to try and care about understanding how they think, understanding how they feel. It's hard, but yeah, you have to understand how they feel, right? And what's going inside their mind, what's going on inside their heart. And yes, that's difficult. Yeah, it is. That's hard. But so does that mean because it's difficult, we're just like, it can't be done? It can't be done. It's hard. It's difficult. It changes within minutes or seconds, so it's impossible to do, and we'll just not work on it. No, it means that you have to work harder. It means you have to do more. It means you have to quit being so selfish and understand and work at understanding and try to understand what is going through your wife. So, 1 Peter chapter 3, drop down to verse number 7. The Bible says, likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. So, if you tie this whole verse together, we could spend numerous messages about having your prayers hindered and being heirs of grace together, and as a husband and wife, the things that you should do and what this verse is saying to do. We're going to focus on the first, 2/3 of the verse here. But first off is us as husbands, we're supposed to dwell together with them according to knowledge. That means we're supposed to live in a way and live together in a way and live our life in a way that we're trying to understand them according to knowledge, understanding who they are. And that's why God puts in here, as unto the weaker vessel. And that's not to say that the wives are less, right? That's not what that's saying. It's not saying that they're weak and they have to be, everything about them has to be taken care of by the man. Man's the only one to take care of them. But God is saying, understand them as they're different than you. They don't think like you think, and I think we've talked about that the last few weeks, how men and women talk differently to each other. They expect different kind of conversations. They are pink and blue sunglasses. Remember, as men, we have blue sunglasses and blue hearing aids, and we interpret things a certain way. But women, they talk and hear with pink sunglasses and pink hearing aids. And so we have to work on deciphering our spouse's code. What are they saying? As a woman, she's not saying what your best friend says when she says things to you guys. And wives, your husband is not saying the things that your mom would say or your sister would say. He doesn't mean the same things. We think and have a different perspective. And as husbands and wives, we need to work on understanding and deciphering that code of our spouse. Almost giving them the benefit of the doubt a lot of times. and not just jumping all over them when they say something that you interpret that's not what they meant. Right? We have to work on understanding. And so since we're focusing on the husbands, that's what we're going to focus on here. And the whole weaker vessel thing, it's not an insult, right? God made women a certain way. God made men a certain way. And when we fulfill our roles and live the way God expects us to live, and in our relationship as a husband and wife, fulfill the role we're supposed to fulfill there, again, when you do things God's way, it's always, always better. Now, we tend to naturally kind of buck against some of those things and want to be more independent and strong, and I can do things on my own. And while that may be true, God says, as the wife, fulfill the wife's role. And that's where the respect of your husband comes in. When a wife is trying to be independent and do everything on her own, and I don't need, if you ever had this thought, and it's probably not anyone in this room, but if you ever had the thought, I don't need my husband to do this, or I don't need a man to do this because I can take care of myself. When a man hears that or sees that acted out in a relationship, he views that as disrespect, big time. That's taking his knees right out from underneath him because you don't need him, because you're capable of doing. And while you may be capable, as God has made you a human being and you're capable of a lot of things, God has set up the family order in a certain way where God is the head, and then he put the husband in charge of the family. And that puts the responsibility on him to take care of the wife and to take care of the family. When the wife says, I can do it myself, and kind of supersedes her husband, that's seen very much so as a disrespectful attitude towards the husband. And if that's the way you might live your life, and sometimes that's jumping right on that crazy cycle and giving it a spin. So be careful about how you view how you live your life and how you're able to do. Yes, you're capable, but God has given us roles as husbands and wives to fulfill. And when we fall into our roles and do what we're supposed to do and be the way we're supposed to be, your relationship is going to be way better than it would be on your own. And again, that's not to say the wife is weaker as in less than. It's equal, right? It's the same. You're equal but different. The biblical wife is submitted to her husband, right? In other passages, it tells the wife to submit to her husband. And a lot of times, women don't like to hear that, right? Women don't like to hear that they're supposed to submit because maybe they feel vulnerable. When you submit, you're vulnerable to whoever you're submitting to. And when it comes to a marriage relationship, that can be sometimes difficult because maybe he's not worthy of being submitted to, right? But then we'll backtrack to say, you respect your husband whether he deserves it or not. It doesn't say respect him as long as he's worthy, because now you're trying to determine if he deserves respect or not. That's not what God says. Just like the husband isn't told to love his wife as long as she's lovable. I mean, every wife is lovable all the time, obviously, but there might be times where they're not as lovable, right? We all have bad days. When we have bad days and it comes out and it's hard to love us, you might have, little prickly spines around you, and it's just like no one wants to really get close because that might hurt. And we have bad days and we can be unlovable. But the husbands, it doesn't say, well, as long as your wife is lovable and she's being meek and kind and submitting, then you love her. But if she's being, not those things, well, then you don't have to love her. No, you love her no matter what. And wives, you need to respect your husbands no matter what. And that comes with submitting. And the weaker vessel is telling us as husbands, our roles are to love our wives and to love our wives like Christ loved the church. Now, he did everything for the church. He gave his life for us. And he has given us so many instructions on how to live life, how to be, and has taken care of every little thing that we can think of. And as husbands, if we're supposed to love our wives that way, we have to understand, as the weaker vessel, as the ones submitting themselves to us, that makes them vulnerable. And you have to treat them in a way that you understand that they're, and if I say the word fragile, I don't mean mentally or emotionally fragile. I'm just saying they're maybe more precious even. Maybe even more valuable because of their vulnerability to you as a husband. If you take two dishes, and I got these I was going to bring something else and I forgot. But if you take these two dishes, right, they're two bowls. One's plastic, one's glass. If this is the husband and this is the wife, you're both human beings, you're both bowls, you both can do similar things. But this one, I would even say this is probably more valuable than this one is. If this is the husband and this is the wife, they're both humans, but the wife is more fragile than the husband is. I could drop this and it'd bounce. This would probably bounce too because it's probably not real glass. But just pretend that this is like china, right? Fine china. If you were to drop a nice fine china that's in your grandma's china cabinet on the floor, it would shatter. You could do that to a man. You can smack him around. He can get beat up by life, and he's okay. He'll live. But if something little, even if you as a husband do something to your wife that cracks her, if you treat her in a way that's harsh, that's unloving, as someone that's a weaker vessel and maybe a little bit more fragile, you can crack your spouse emotionally. And as a husband, you are responsible to love her in a way that you of all people, don't crack her and don't shatter her. The husbands can treat their wife in a way that just shatters their spirit by words. They don't have to touch her. They don't have to do anything. All they have to do is speak, and they can shatter that china bowl super easily. And God says we need to dwell with our wives according to knowledge, and wanting to understand what it is that would shatter and crack and even give a little hairline fracture in our wives, and understand how to not do that, how to treat them in a way that they're elevated, that they are wanting to submit to you because you're treating them in a way that you understand they're vulnerable to you and they're submitting to you, and you want to honor them and love them and cherish them and take care of them because of that. So that's the understanding I talk about, and I think the Bible talks about when it tells us to dwell with them in understanding or in knowledge, is to understand who they are. And yes, that means you got to know their emotions. You got to understand how they function. You need to understand their thoughts. And while we can't read their minds, you sure should want to be able to interpret based on who they are, how they act, what they say, what's going on in their heart. Right? You want to be open with your wife, she'll be open with you much easier than you will be. But that means you need to work at understanding what it is that makes her tick. And every woman's different, right? Your wife is different than any other woman in the world. But your wife's the only one that matters when it comes to this. So how does she think? How do her emotions work? What is it that you can do or avoid doing that'll prevent her from being cracked or tarnished? What is it that you can do that will elevate her, put her on the top shelf of the china cabinet because she's valuable, because you don't want anything to happen to her, because you want to take care of her. You want to make sure she's capable of doing what God wanted her to do. If she's cracked and shattered because of the way you taught her, or to treat her, she's not going to be able to be a very good mom because she's shattered from the way you've treated her. She's not going to be a very good friend. She's not going to be able to be a very good Christian. She's going to struggle in some other areas because you as a husband have not put her on the top shelf of the china cabinet. You've treated her harshly. You've slid her across the table in a manner of speaking and not taken care of the china bowl because you're fine. You know, you're made out of clay or plastic and you can get bumped around and you can get over it. We talked about that last week with compartmentalizing ourselves and being able to put things that bother us away and move on and act as if nothing ever happened. Your wives are not like that. So we need to, then that's the weaker vessel. And wives, you need to understand that too. And hopefully none of us, you're all mature enough to understand that being a weaker vessel doesn't cause you to bristle. But you understand that's what that means. It means you're valuable. It means the husband, he's telling the husbands here, your wife is a weaker vessel. He's not telling the wives, you're weaker, so submit. He's saying, husbands, your wife is weaker, so take care of her. She's vulnerable, so be understanding. Want to understand who she is. Handle with care, right? You could even, I was going to bring in a hammer and a bowl that Lisa would let me break. And I was going to say, guys, you're the hammer, and here's your wife, and I was going to hit the bowl with a hammer, and it doesn't affect the hammer at all, but it shatters that bowl into pieces. Guys, you're the hammer, your wives are the bowl. Handle with care. You've got to treat them in a way and love them because that's what they need. If you aren't giving them what they need, they aren't going to be able to function, and they aren't going to give you the respect because they aren't going to be able to function that way. So it starts with you. It starts with us as men. And you know what? Even if you're a good husband and you do your best, there are times where you're going to fail. There are times when you're going to fly off the handle. There are times you're going to say things that are going to hurt. And when that happens, you need to know that and understand that and take care of it right away. you need to know that that's how you're acting. So handle with care. Again, one's not more valuable than the other, but they're different and they serve different purposes. The china is more delicate than the plastic bowl. And if we're not seeking to understand our wives, actively working, that means it can't be a passive thing. That means you're not going to do it by osmosis. It means you have to talk to her. It means you have to be open. It means you have to be close to her to understand who she is. Now, the longer you're married, you learn things about each other, right? Like the longer you're together, you see the flaws, but you understand what they like, what they dislike. You understand how they react in situations. When the kids get sick, you know how she's going to react when her mom calls or her sister calls or things happen in life. The longer you're together, the more you understand how they react and how they think and how their emotions work. Now, a lot of times what will happen the longer you're married, the husbands will understand that, and maybe the mom calls and that's a bad thing or a good thing. And rather than trying to understand and be there for the wife, he'll be like, all right, mom called. I'll be back in an hour. And he'll go out and do his thing, right? He'll run his errands, or he'll be gone for the afternoon because he doesn't want to deal with it. Or if something happened at her job, or if something happened with the kids, he'll be like, all right, I'll be back when you're settled down, when everything's fine and everything's back to normal, I'll be back. And they walk away. And that might be a dramatic example, but as husbands, if she's the china, if she's the valuable bowl that you're in charge of taking care of, when something affects her emotionally, you should be the one that's in there saying, okay, how can I help you? And you know what? And we're going to get to this in a minute. You may not have to do anything. You may just have to be there. Again, closeness. You may just have to be there when something is bothering your china bowl that you're in charge of taking care of that is valuable, and something's happening to it. You may just have to be around to just hold it and hang on to it and let your wife know she's valued and loved. You may not have to do anything. Okay, but she's everything you need. Right? As a man, your wife is what you need. That's why you married her. That's why you said, you, until death do we part. That's the one you need. That's the one you've decided that God has for you. You can't just say, I don't understand. I don't understand you. I'll never understand you. Let me know when you figured it out, and walk away. You can't walk away and stonewall because you don't get it. You don't understand her emotional mood swings or how she's feeling and thinking, and so you can't just walk away and say, I don't have time for this. You have to take care of your china bowl. You have to love her and try to understand her and work at understanding her. And it's not a passive thing. It takes effort. All right, so one of the very first things, how do we show understanding, right? That's something to be like, okay, as a husband, I want to understand my wife. How do I let her know that I want to understand her, right? And wives, as husbands do this, understand this is what they're trying to do. They may do it poorly, right? They may deliver the line wrong. Or they may deliver the line and get a boo. Who knows? But if they're delivering the line, understand they're trying.
Come on.
And
now.
see, yeah, okay. Yeah, now I'm getting it. Understand what they're trying understand what they're trying to do and see that. And that's the respect part, right? But husbands, if you don't even try, right, how are you going to understand if you don't want to understand or try to understand? So the first thing you can do to show understanding, it's the easiest thing you can do. You ready? It's going to blow your mind. You've never heard this ever before in your life. Listen. That's how you show you understand. You listen. Right? I have employees, and side note here, I have employees that think they know everything. They've been working I have this one particular that's been working for a few months. He's worked other restaurants before, but he thinks he knows everything. So he'll do something, he'll make something, or he'll do something and be like, okay, that's fine, but the way I want it done is you got to do. He's like, yeah, nope, right, I got it. It's like, I didn't even tell you what I want. Like literally, he'll interrupt, be like, okay, what you need to do is when you do this, yep, okay, got it, yep, you got it, good, I got it, yep. Like, whoa, man, listen to me. Don't speak. Let me finish until there's a period at the end of the sentence. If there's a question mark, then you can speak, but if not, you just hear. And I've had to literally say that to him. He's like, oh, okay. And he'll stop talking. I still don't know if it actually gets here, but that's my point. Listening, as husbands, we can be guilty of that too. When our wife just wants us to listen, we can get in there and try to solve her problem. We can get in there and try to respond. Oh, yeah, that's happened to me before. She doesn't care if it's happened to you before. She doesn't care if you have a solution sometimes. Sometimes she just literally, all you have to do, and it's easy but we make it hard. As husbands, all you have to do is just listen. And that doesn't mean you're thinking about your trail cams and wondering if anything went by it today. As she's speaking, that means listen to the words she's saying. That doesn't mean think about how you're going to respond when she's done and give her the solution that you're going to save her and solve her problem. But just hear her. Just hear what she has to say. Now, Mark brought in the remote, and you've probably seen this before, but it's too good. It's not about the... I love that video. I think it's awesome. Sorry, listeners, to the audio version for the pulpit moving and not hearing the YouTube video. But go see the video. It's not about the nail. So I've seen that before. Someone showed that to me a few years ago. I might have even tried to show it in here before. But it's great. It's silly. It's overblown. But you've had those conversations without the nail sticking out of the forehead, where the wife is trying to say something to you and you think you got it figured out, right? That husband had it figured out. It was pretty obvious, right? But he's like, I can solve your problem. In his mind, I can solve your problem right here, right now. But she doesn't want the problem solved. At that moment, right, in that conversation, she didn't want the problem solved. And sometimes it happens, guys. Your wife doesn't want the problem solved right now. Maybe she'll ask you to help her with that later, or maybe she'll see that she needs your help with that later. But at that moment, she just wanted somebody to empathize. That's it. And guys, we struggle at empathizing sometimes. Because usually if a guy came to another guy and is like, man, that just hurts, and be like, dude, suck it up. Okay, rough. I'm sorry. You'll be fine. And a guy has a hard time empathizing a lot of times. But with your wife, she's not your buddy. Right? She's not your dad. She's not your brother. She's your wife. She's your china bowl. She sometimes just needs you to hear her. And when she comes to you and is talking, and it's when those talks come, you're like, oh boy, all right. How do we prepare for this? Strap in. It's gonna be emotional, and that's what's going on in your mind. And you're like, you don't want to deal with it. Most time, husbands are like, oh boy, I don't either one. I don't know what to do here. I don't know what the right answer is here, right? Or she's not going to let me fix it. So, step one, to show her you're trying to understand, just listen to her. Let her bear her heart. Let her let all those emotions out on you, because you're the one that takes care of her. You're the one that lives with her in understanding, to understand who she is. If she can't come to you and bear her heart and tell her all the things that are bothering her without you trying to fix everything, who else is she going to go to? Then she'll go to her girlfriends. Then she'll go to her mom. And you'll be like, why are you always talking to your mom? Be the one for her. Be that person. You want her to feel comfortable coming to you, to bear all those feelings and emotions to you. And as a man, that can be hard to deal with because you don't know how to deal with them. You don't have those emotions sometimes. You don't respond the same way as she does. But she needs somebody to just vent, to just all of that out. And as a husband, you should be the one to do that, because the Bible tells us to dwell with them according to knowledge, to want to understand who they are and what makes them tick. So let her do that. Let her give you. Let her just talk to you without a solution, without getting out the graph paper and be like, all right, if we start here and just try to map out a problem-solving solution, just listen. Just sit there and listen. You can even, if you're not sure and you guys have been married a while, even if you haven't, it doesn't really matter. But if you're not sure, husbands, what to do, and wives, let them do this. Before the conversation starts, if you ask, do you need a solution or do you just want me to listen? That might feel awkward to say before you talk, but you want to do what she needs from you. There's nothing wrong with saying, do you need me to fit? Do you need a solution or you just want me to hear you? And the wives, if they ask you that, be like, oh, you should know. You should know what I need. No. Say, I just need you to listen. Or say, yeah, I need help with something. I need a solution. Again, that's being open. That's being transparent. That's saying we're close enough that we can be honest with each other. And yeah, I don't need a solution right now. I just need you to listen. And if she says that, guys, then listen. If she says she wants help with a solution, then work on that. But be man enough and strong enough and open enough to say, hey, what do you need from me? When those conversations come up. Do you need a solution or do you just need me to listen? She puts importance on listening. She puts importance on sharing. Your wife puts importance on sharing things in her life, sharing things on her day, sharing things that are going on in her heart and in her mind. That's how she releases her emotions, is she talks about it. She gets it out. She talks about her emotions. She talks about the good things, the bad things. That's how she releases those things. And she doesn't always need a fix. But when she is there and is ready and wants to release those emotions and give you that information, you need to be ready to do it, to understand her. And if you're in that mindset of, okay, how do I understand my wife? She just needs me to listen. Then you sit there and don't just let her get done. Wah, wah, it's not Charlie Brown's teacher, right? Listen intently. What is she saying? What is she trying to get across? What is she talking about? And don't just give the, wow, that sounds hard, token response. But listen to what's going on in her heart. This is your wife. If you have kids, this is the mother of your children. What's going on in her heart? You need to know that as a husband. You need to know what's in her heart, what's in her mind, and how can you help her? How can you be there for her and be the one that you just listen to? That talking builds rapport between the two of you as well. It builds a relationship. It bonds you. It builds that closeness. Just talking can build that closeness. And you know what? When she's done giving you her emotions, she might want you to tell her what you think about it and how you feel. Not fix it, but just tell her how you feel about maybe the same thing. And you're not going to want to do that. Naturally, as a man, you'd be like, great, I understand your emotions. Are we done? And she'd be like, did you not listen to me? She wants you to respond, to have a conversation. It's not a monologue. It's a conversation. Sometimes maybe she just needs to get something off her chest and tell you, and that's fine. But there will be times where she expects some discourse, some back and forth. And that means you're going to have to be open to tell her how you feel about stuff. And if you're going to be the man that lives with her in understanding and gives her the love that she needs, you're going to have to do that. You should want to do that. And that's where those deep heart-to-heart conversations come. Where you're not just talking about what's for dinner, but you're talking about what's going on in your heart, in your soul. As two Christians that have the Holy Spirit that live inside of you, those heart-to-heart conversations that just bear each other's soul to one another, those are what bring you close. Those are the things that bond. And when you're done with those conversations, guys, your wife will feel loved. She'll feel wrapped up in that love, and she'll feel fulfilled in her role because you have fulfilled your role and given her the love that she needs. She doesn't compartmentalize like you do. She needs that discourse. She needs that talking. And as I finish up here, one last thing. Getting to that place, getting into understanding takes time. It takes time. And it means it's not just one conversation. You can't just this week be like, okay, I'm going to do what the Bible says. I'm going to live with her, dwell with her according to knowledge, and I'm going to listen to this conversation and talk with her. And when you're done, be like, sweet, we're close. I understand. I can go back to normal. No, you have to do this every day. Every day you have to work at understanding her. You have to love her. You have to show her you love her every day. And that takes time. And the hard thing for us as men, that takes effort. And I'll speak for myself. I'm lazy. And when things take constant attention, constant effort, I will lose my oomph eventually, because that's what will happen if I don't on purpose do it. So you have to on purpose show your wife love by trying to understand her. Now all that, again, understanding is tied directly to being open and tied directly to her feeling and needing that closeness. So we've got a few more letters to go here, guys. And what we've been dealing with so far is all pretty much emotional. But that's your wife. That's your china bowl. She's the weaker vessel. She's valuable. She's delicate. She needs someone that understands that and wants to understand that and wants to take care of her in the way that God made her. And that's on us as husbands. So, all right, I will pray, and then we'll be dismissed.